Kayda başlıyorum. Çakacak mıyız bu? Tamam.
Bir dakika. Çak abi şu anda.
Sen de içinde misin?
Evet.
Bir dakika. Bir tane daha çekeceğim birazdan.
Tamam.
Bir saniye bekle. Bir şey değil. Tamam çak abi.
3, 2, 1.
Memnunsun değil mi Can burada benden?
Evet.
Çok az kullandığım için hala yaşıyor. Okay.
Öyle mi? Öyle demiştim. Okay, this scene is coming. Çok kasma.
Karanlık sahneden başla.
Fark etmez. Uzatma. Okay.
Alright, it's coming.
Okay, no problem. Oh yeah, Star Wars. One of the Star Wars ones. I don't know which one it was actually, but yeah, it's cool. You know, I sort of grew up with this sort of thing. You know, I'm old enough still to have grown up with it, I guess. And when it first came out, you know, I wasn't even, I never imagined myself working in films. You know, it was too sort of, too much to do with America, and you know, we didn't have a film business back in New Zealand back then. So you know, I looked at it and appreciate it much like you guys would have, I suppose, just as a sort of an audience. So never in my wildest dreams did I think I was going to end up being in the business, you know, and doing this sort of work.
In an interview, Peter Jackson told that he used the technique, especially in the art department, to reveal the sets and props
To make
it older, to give a more authentic feeling. And how was the process of that in the Lord of the Rings set, for example?
When we first started doing the Lord of the Rings, you know, we were talking about it as a fantasy. You know, it's a fantasy sort of thing. And he says, no, it's not a fantasy. It's it's another reality. We're making a real film with real people, real dwarves and real elves and a real Middle Earth. And so, you know, finding that that sense of believability, I think is really important, because you sort of have to, you know, one of the great things about film, I should say, is that you've got to be in there. You know, when you go there to watch a film, you forget about being in a cinema, you forget about who you went with, you're sort of like completely focused on the story and the whole world that you immerse yourself in. So making it dirty, I mean, actually when we were doing what was it? Might have been King Kong or one of those films. He was saying, you know, I need a dirtier set. I need more litter and more rubbish and more pebbles and rocks and things like that thrown all over the streets, because streets are like that. You know, they're not clean and you know, and clinical. They are busy, textural places. So.
And was Star Wars an influence for you?
I think it can't help being, you know, that you can.
In terms of like becoming a production designer, becoming an art director, was it like?
Well, I suppose it is. I mean, you know, looking back on it, it all looks very setty and you know, sort of designy in a way. But I can't say I saw Star Wars and decided to become a production designer back then, because it was just not part of my landscape. But I guess in retrospect, it just the way that it accessible is an accessible sort of comic booky kind of thing. Because I used to do comics and things like that myself. So the popular culture thing was good for me. Actually, it was in Lord of the Rings as well, in Bag End. You know the set in Bag End in Lord of the Rings? It's where the hobbits live.
Oh yeah.
They wanted more mess, way more mess in there, more papers everywhere, and more sort of.
And you built it again for Hobbit, right? Hobbit.
Yeah, I'm not doing the Hobbit, by the
You're
way.
not doing
No.
Hobbit,
I'm just doing. I just did Lord of the Rings. I just thought
they're using the same.
the same sets basically. Well, they were all in storage. The sets and all the props were in storage. Things so.
So they're using it again.
Yeah.
Why not? Why aren't you doing it?
Oh, they asked me to, but I spent 4 or 5 years of my life on that film, and it's like doing it again. I don't know. I just want to move. I wanted to move on.
Okay.
Give other people a turn to do it.
Yeah.
God, I don't know. I've seen it. I've seen it.
It's a tough
It
scene.
will be understood at the end of the scene, actually. A little bit more time.
Okay, it's coming, I guess.
It's one heck of a prop making job, isn't it? It's not Edward Scissorhands, is it? No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Is it?
Yeah,
is, yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
And there
There he is. Okay.
there he is. Okay. Right.
Edward Scissorhands, yeah. I don't know whether I was designing then or not. It would have been
This should be
1980s?
1989 or 1990.
1990.
Yeah,
1990, well that's interesting because 1990 was when I designed my first film. I've been an art director before that, like working for other designers.
How do you see Tim Burton in terms of this old production and art direction stuff? Because he's like more expressionist.
Look, what I like about him, and I like about a lot of people like him, is sort of successful people like him, is that they have their own oeuvre. They have. There's a Tim Burton stamp to these movies that are unmistakable, really.
How about you said you were an art director before and then you started doing production design. Maybe that difference is not
quite
very
clear that
for
it's like
most
Oh, it's a sort of an American thing anyway, in a way, because the English system has a more of an art director, traditional art director role all the way through. But in New Zealand now and in America now, you become an art director which handles things like the business side of the film, the budgeting and the crewing and you see through various kind of the building process of the sets, but the production designer is like the creative head of the department, and the production designer works to the director more immediately and responsible for the overall design, overall look and the overall feel of the film. So it's a little bit different. The art director is kind of more business side of things. I employ an art director as a production designer, or often several art directors, and so I have specific art directors dealing with specific design jobs like this set or that location or what have you. But and the oversight is the production designer's job. I'd been working all the way through the 1980s as a art director, and I designed my first film in 1990 and didn't go back to art directing after that,
And how did that difference work, like when you first did production design?
Oh well, you know, I was ready for it, and you know, it worked very well. I mean, the film I designed actually did really well. It's a New Zealand director called Jane Campion, and she directed a thing called An Angel at My Table, which is what the film was. And she went on then to do...
The first film was An Angel at My Table?
Angel at My Table, yeah. Yeah, and it got shown in Europe here a bit.
Yeah,
and,
we know about that.
Oh, yeah.
We love Jane Campion.
Oh, you do? Good, yeah. She went on from there to do the piano, of course, and then she kind of like rocketed to stardom. So, you know, I did her first, what was it? No, second feature film, actually. She'd done one just immediately out of art school. Sweetie was the first one. And Peel was one she did in art school, a little short film. So
actually, like 5 or 6 years ago, we did this same interview with her.
Oh, did you? Oh, right.
In Istanbul.
Yeah, yeah, she's fantastic. She's actually just back in New Zealand now to do a TV series, actually, for the BBC, I understand. So, you know.
Quality is not quite good, but I think you'll understand in 3
Oh.
seconds.
Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember actually that very set because it was done, the set was done in post-production after everything else had been finished. Peter got back in touch and said, oh, we haven't done the exterior of Borovnia. And here we are. Oh gosh, I haven't seen this film for years, actually. Years and years. Wow. Little Mel Linsky, of course, she's quite famous now. Mel in TV, and mainly in TV, I think, isn't it, in America? She came from New Plymouth. And I've actually still got one of the rubber masks that we did for Kate Winslet under my house somewhere. I was given it as a sample piece of how they were going to do all these plasticine, the sort of faux plasticine figurines. And this is all carved out of polystyrene. I mean, this is done for a very small amount of money, this whole film, you know, and so it was all very hands-on. And Peter had these little models of, I don't know what they call them now, but little cast models of traditional Englishy sort of idealised houses and pubs and halls and all that sort of stuff that you can sort of collect them. I can't remember what they're called. He said, I want it to just look like this. And yeah, I just had to design this whole sort of environment, and it was way back before the technologies of spray urethane foam these days. So it was all done hand carved out of polystyrene, you know, and covered in plaster and painted. So yeah.
What do you
fun.
think about the film itself? Because it's for both of us, it's our favorite.
Oh really? Really?
Favorite Peter Jackson.
Well, you know, I can never tell what a film's going to be like when you're making it. You know, I don't know about you guys, but you know, when you're in the middle of it, you can't see the wood for the trees really. And I didn't know if it was going to be any good. And when I first saw it, I thought, oh well, you know, this is kind of okay. But you know, and then I looked at it a second time and I thought, you know, this is actually pretty good. And it's always a great pleasure in having a film do well after you spend time on it, because it's obviously you know, I don't know when we're making it whether it's going to be any good or not. I'm just concentrating on the design and the set and the every day-to-day sort of part of the filmmaking. But when it actually does well, it's like it's a bonus. You know, my own career and was sort of not unlike Peter's career at the time when you know, we all worked on, you know, the next film was bigger than the last one, and the next one was bigger than the last one, and the next one was even bigger still. So you know, it's a great sort of roller coaster ride.
Now there's a digital revolution. Technology is getting crazy. How this process changed from early 90s to 2011? And,
oh yeah, hugely.
And how did you adapt yourself to this change?
Yeah, interesting question, because Heavenly Creatures was the first film I'd ever designed with a visual effects shot in it, you know, and I think it was only one or two in the whole film, and Peter and George Port at the time had invested in this Silicon Graphics computer, and you know, so it was quite exciting. Sort of the first morph, it was actually morphing, which in itself was a really new technology back then, you know, being able to change one scene into another sort of on screen like that. So you know, that was very much what their fantasy thing was built around. The film craft back then, and I learnt my craft at the BBC in London way back in the 1970s and 80s, early 80s, and that itself had its roots in the theatre time. So the people who taught me were these theatre people. Flats and plasterwork and stagecraft and things like that was very, very old school sort of way of doing things, and that's what I learnt in. And so, with the advent of digital things, it's been a race to keep pace with it because it happens so fast. So a lot of the design work I'm doing now, like for Green Lantern, the last one I did was more to do with the concept work that was going to go straight to digital, or combination stuff that goes, sort of part set and part digital. So, the work, the set design is getting more broader and sort of more imaginative because you can do so much more now in digital work, and the way we go about doing it is more bitty, more sort of broken down.
I think in Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson preferred to build sets instead of making it.
Well, he started that way.
Yeah.
We started doing things in Lord of the Rings, and by the end of it, we were doing small. Well, I don't know if this is universal, but we're doing a lot more sort of smaller pieces and then extended backgrounds. I think it was his confidence as well, and having the digital side of things work so well, and models. We're using a lot of model photography, of course, as well, which was, I think, gave it a lot of character. So. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Still evolving now, actually. I mean, it's changes. Every film I do, there's more and more sort of things to learn about it. Oh, is this Gattaca?
Yeah,
is it?
that's right.
Oh, right. This is really interesting because I was toying with doing his next film. I mean, he's very stylish. He's a New Zealander, I think, way back. Is it Andrew Nichol? Andrew Nichol. That's right. I love this sort of film. I love it. I love these kind of cerebral things where there's it's also very stylish, of course, but. I love it I love a film when you kind of walk out of the cinema, even the next day, you're still sort of thinking, wow, that was such a creative idea. Andrew doesn't often claim his New Zealand shit, New Zealand. There's other directors like Andrew Adamson and Martin Campbell who I worked with recently. They're still very much sort of Kiwi boys, but I don't know whether Andrew comes back to New Zealand very often. I don't see him there very often, put it that way. There was no film industry in New Zealand when I was at art school, which would be in the 1970s. I mean, there had been some films done, but there was no industry as such. And there might have been one film every 10 years before that. New Zealand is a long way away from everywhere, and it doesn't get heard very often. It's a small country, and I think we're known for our sheep and dairy, and we're known for our football, rugby, and that's all. So. No cultural, before that we hadn't been known culturally for very much, The New Zealand dollar is worth only, 75, 80 cents US, so that makes it a bit cheaper. And we also got quite good film tax rebate kind of things to stay competitive. Staying competitive with Australia is very important. I'd like to think they come to New Zealand for other things as well, not just the money. We've got a reasonable crew, experienced crew, and we've got very good locations. It's very easy to shoot there, very easy to do business there. So, all that sort of stuff. Good coffee.
Okay, another production design film.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can.
Oh yeah, this is my all-time favourite. It probably is for most people, I think.
It is my all-time favourite too.
It is just, it was just so out there and so well done. I don't think space has ever been done as well as this, actually. It's just such a beautiful film, and what I learnt about Kubrick is that he was so uncompromising, and I think, you know, he's Peter Jackson's favourite director as well. Really, I think he learnt a lot from him as well. He micromanaged everything, you know, costume design, set design, makeup and lighting. He'd do the camera work himself, and you know, I really respect that, because it's again, it's to do with the idiosyncratic nature of when you micromanage like that, you turn out you're very much your own film. You know, with collaborative things, there's a temptation for it to be like a committee, you know, and for a lot of people to have decision making. And I think that these creative exercises function best when there's a strong personality at the helm. I mean, it's a great thing about film, and it's one of the great things about being a designer for me, is that every new film that comes along is a new creative challenge. You know, it's not just new people, but not just a new script, but it's a new world to create. And you know, my favourite phase of a film is that very early sort of blue sky thinking kind of time when you first get a project and you say, you know, what can it be? What do you want to get out of this film? And then researching the world. You know, obviously this has been really well researched and thought through, the space thing for 2001. But you know, the film I'm doing at the moment, I should say, is you know, 1945 in Japan. You know, with all this sort of American presence and just newly bombed out Tokyo. Well, that's a huge sort of research job to learn all about that world, you know. The one I did before this, Mr. Pip, was based in Bougainville during a civil war in this Papua New Guinean island. That's a whole thing to sort of get my head around and be well versed in, because, you know, when you're designing these things, you have to be really up with all the detail of it for it to be real. You know, you're sort of creating something that is real.
Okay, so are we cool?
I guess.
Anything you want to add? I don't know, maybe. You want to say?
We've just gone over the things I was going to talk about in the conference, actually, so that's good. I've had time to practice what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, when you're direct, you've got to stand up and account for your film in front of everybody. The designers very rarely do that, you know.
You just do your job.
We just,
That's it.
I guess so, yeah. It's funny, actually, when I was you know, from Lord of the Rings, went from being just a provincial designer, you could say, to being kind of, you know, noticed a bit more in Hollywood in particular, I guess, and being encouraged to talk to the cameras more, you know, things like that. And I realised I've never ever done it before, and never sort of been sort of being part of my job description. You know, normally we've sort of just got our heads down on the design, but actually having to get up and talk about it was something completely different. You know, I like to think I'm a little better at it now, but.
So what are you going to talk about at the conference?
Oh, look, they rang up and said, "Oh, you're the Lord of the Rings guy, right?" And so I guess it's going to have to be that, you know, one of the more recognisable things. But that's right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you very much.
That's good. I got most of them. I guess most of them. I'm pleased with that.